Hello everyone and welcome to a short coverage of what happened yesterday. I know I said I was gonna live stream the Magnus versus Carlsen match, but the Magnus versus Hans match, but I had a visit from Netherlands. My family that I haven't seen for some 25 years came to visit, and I thought, yeah, it was a good time to catch up. So we had some beer and we watched the semi-final match together, both of them, the Alireza versus Nakamura and Hans versus Magnus, and it was a really incredible match. Both of them. I decided to show you a game from each. From the Alireza versus Hikaru, I will show you a game from the 5+1 segment, and also from the Hans Magnus match. I will also show you a game from the 5+1 segment, the ones that I thought were the most important for where the match was going. Now, I'm sure you guys know what happened in the match, but we're going to check out the games and then we're going to discuss it in case someone hasn't watched the entire thing yesterday. To watch both matches, you need some 8 hours in total, but if you have 8 hours, it's not the worst day the worst way to spend your day. So let's check it out. This is the first game we are showing, Alireza versus Hikaru. The match started really interestingly. Alireza sacrificed his queen for some compensation, and Hikaru won the first game. And a second game ended in a draw. Then Alireza won, and then Alireza took the lead. And well, this is one of the games from that segment, from the 5+1 section. Let's check it out. Alireza with white opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to e5, and I will no longer be ducking below to fix the audio, as the speakers that I've been using since I've started the channel have died yesterday and I had to buy new ones. These are ones that I found in the local shop. I'll probably replace them at some point, but they don't have the volume. The volume button is not below the table; it's actually on the table, so I don't have to lower myself to fix the audio for you guys. So I don't know if it will remain like this, but until I get the new speakers, this is the way it is. Just in case you guys are wondering why am I no longer fixing the audio below the table. So e4, e5, we have knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to b5. Alireza goes for the Ruy Lopez. We have pawn to a6, Morphy's defense, bishop to a4, and bishop to c5. At the so-called deferred classical defense, we have c3, knight g7, and pawn to d4. All been played before, nothing new here. Captures, bishop to b4 check, knight to c3, d5, e5, and bishop to g4 by Hikaru. We have pawn to a3, attacking the bishop on b4. The bishop on b4, we have bishop to a5, and now bishop to e3, nicely developing, defending on d4. We have pawn to b5, and now bishop back to c2. We have bishop to b6, and there is a game where queen to d3 was played, but here we have knight to e2, and it is now as of move 13 that we have a completely new game, inviting Hikaru to capture on f3, but Hikaru first goes queen to d7, no need to rush it, and pawn to a4 by Alireza. We have castles by both of them, castles, and now bishop captures on f3. Hikaru accepts the challenge. He will mess up Alireza's pawn structure in front of the king, and Alireza will get the semi-open g file to use for attacking the black king. Plus, also Alireza keeps the bishop pair. We have g captures on f3, knight to f5, and a captures on b5. And this is already where the magic happens. Hikaru can just play a captures on b5, and everything is perfectly fine. For example, a captures, rook captures, and now something like king to h1. The game continues. Nothing seriously went wrong here. But after this a captures on b5, Hikaru threw a nice Zwischenzug. He played knight to h4, and the position is now winning for Alireza. But only if you find what the problem with knight to h4 is. It's very hard to spot. Have at it while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this brilliant idea. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is pawn to e6. This is the move that stops Hikaru's plans. Now, the reason why it's so strong is that what happens if you don't play e6? What happens if you just capture the knight? Well, if you capture the knight, then queen to h3, threatens checkmate, and there's no good way to avoid this. After knight to f3, the only way to guard the g2 square, you'll play knight captures on f3 with check, and checkmate the white king unless white gives up the queen. So you'd have to give up the queen, and then your position is lost. But after pawn to e6, this changes matters drastically, because now, if you capture with the queen, what changed by advancing the pawn to e6? Well, now you have knight f4. Attacking the queen, stopping queen to h3, and also there is no knight captures on f3 with check, and once the queen moves, you just take the free knight, you're up a piece and completely winning. On the other hand, after pawn to e6, you could play f captures on e6, not allow knight to f4 to come with an attack on the queen, but even if you do this, you block your own queen. The queen no longer has access to h3, and now you just take the free knight. B captures on c6, the queen is hanging, and you don't have time for e5, queen h3, like if knight captures on f3 check, king g2, now the queen is hanging again, and not much for you to try. If queen to d6, attacking the pawn on h2, just knight g3, there is no compensation here for Hikaru. So, of course, after pawn, and Alireza hasn't even planned it. You can see that, let me just allow the clocks real quickly, just give me a second. As they are kind of relevant for this game. I haven't included them. There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, 3 minutes and 57, 3 minutes 58, so both players playing really quickly. Alireza actually spent some 30 seconds on this move, so it wasn't prepared. He probably maybe thought about it, but he still had to calculate it out precisely, and Hikaru played queen to d6 after spending also some 20 seconds. He decided, of course, that the pawn cannot be captured. He realized what Alireza was up to, and now b captures on c6. Hikaru is now down a piece, but he still has some sort of an attack happening. Knight captures on f3 with check, nicely connecting with the h2 pawn. King g2 and queen captures on h2 with check. King captures on f3 and f captures on e6 with check. So can you survive this? The queen, the bishop here looks very dangerous. Knight to f4, rook captures on f4 check. Hikaru goes all out here. Bishop captures, rook to f8, queen to d2 defending the bishop, and now pawn to g5, preparing rook captures on f4, and now Alireza starts running with his king. King to e2. Hikaru grabs the bishop, rook captures on f4, and now just queen to e3. Nicely played, calmly played. Alireza, just waltzes his queen into the middle of the board like nothing is happening, and that is because nothing is happening. Yes, there's a rook, queen, and bishop surrounding the white king, but there's just no way to reach the white king. Bishop captures on d4 by Hikaru. Now just queen captures on e6 with check, king g7, queen to e7 with check, king to h8, and as he played king to h8, it was also in this position on move 28 that Hikaru Nakamura resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. If Hikaru would continue, then it would be pure pain. For example, queen to d8 with check, you were gonna get the king to the g file before capturing on g5, queen captures on g5 with check, this frees up the g file for the rook, and I have king h8, queen to d8, check, king g7 again, let's say rook to g1 with check, king f7, and now the checkmating attack occurs. Queen d5 check, king e7, queen to d7 with check, king to f6, queen to d8 with check, king e5, rook g5 check, and after king to e6, just bishop to b3, and this is now a nice checkmate as everything is covered. That's how it happened, and I thought this was a crucial game in how the match will go, because like I said, Hikaru started by winning the first game, then Alireza calmed things down with a draw, then he won 2 games, took the lead, and then Alireza had the lead until the end of the match. And Alireza was better in the 5+1 section, he was better in the 3+1 section. Only in the 1+1 section is where Hikaru was better. He won, I think, in 1+1 he won 5-4. But Alireza won a very, very dominating match, and he will face the winner of the Magnus Carlsen versus Hans Niemann match, and we are going to cover a game from that one. And this is the first game that we are going to cover. I just have to really quickly fix this. I thought I had it prepared. There we go. All right. Yeah, for some reason, it's just not there. What are you gonna do? There we go. Clock time's here. Okay, I will include the timestamp so you don't have to watch, me do this stuff. But yeah, Magnus versus Hans, this is the first game of their match. And the last time they faced each other was in the Singfield Cup round 3, if I remember correctly, of 2022. Then, the whole saga started of the Hans Magnus saga, and here we are. If you don't know what I'm talking about, first link in the description below, a beautiful game by Hans against Magnus, and everything is explained, so do check it out. If you know what I'm talking about, let's check out the game. So this is the first game of the match, and to me, as I watched all of the games, really had a wonderful time with the family. I mean, I'm thinking it's the one that really set the tone for the rest of the match, and how it went. So Magnus with white opens with pawn to b3. He starts off with an Nimso Larsen attack. We have pawn to d5, knight f3. We have bishop to f5, and now bishop to b2. We have pawn to e6 and pawn to g3. And yeah, I mean, if you've been following what's been happening online, if you've been following the interviews, especially the interviews with Hans, where he just, he's in the best shape of his life. He's training with Vladimir Kramnik, former world champion. He's prepared. He wants to be the best chess player in the world, and he's just here to crush everyone. And he's going into this match. He crushed five very strong grandmasters coming here. 3 in person, if you watch the Hans matches, and 2 in the Speeches Championship. So, I mean, Hans is doing incredible. But this is Magnus Carlsen we're talking about, so let's see. Knight to f6, we have bishop to g2, pawn to h6, and pawn to d3. We have bishop to e7, knight b to d2, castles, and now pawn to a5. Magnus goes pawn to a3, bishop to h7, and pawn to c4. And here there are a couple of games. For example, pawn to c6 is a known idea. Hans goes for knight to c6. And it is now, as of move 10, that we have a completely new game. So Magnus did not choose some sort of a forced line, e4, d4, where Hans can just blitz out everything. He's testing how prepared Hans is, how calm he is, how he will play this. And okay, already with knight to c6, Hans presents Magnus with a target. That pawn on c7, it's questionable whether it belongs on c7. So Magnus just plays c captures, e captures, and rook to c1. Saying that he wants to play rook c2, he will probably put a queen on a1 to put pressure on this diagonal, and the other rook is coming to c1 to put pressure on that c7 pawn, since Hans already decided not to put it on c6. Okay, rook to e8, we have rook to e1, bishop to f8, and now rook to c2. Magnus continues with his plan of going after the c7 weakness. Knight to b8, Hans realizes that, okay, the knight really doesn't belong there, or maybe this is some sort of a plan that Hans had. Let's force Magnus into this setup, because of course that's what he's going to go for. And now I'm just going to play c6, and I mean, maybe that's the best way to play. So queen to c1, Magnus puts pressure on the c7 pawn, and everyone expected Hans to go pawn to c6, but no, Hans actually plays pawn to c5, which is considered an inaccuracy here, if in the least, especially in this time format, because it allows Magnus to go for rook captures on c5. He sacrifices the exchange for the mighty bishop pair and a very promising position. Queen captures on c5, knight b to d7, attacking the queen, and queen to b5, putting pressure on b7. But Hans plays very accurately and very actively. He plays rook to e6, saying, okay, if you capture, I'm just going to play rook to b6 and trap your queen. So of course Magnus doesn't do that. He plays bishop to h3, attacks the rook, rook to b6, queen to a4, and now knight to c5. Hans says, all right, I will now take the b3 pawn, and there is nothing you can do about it. Magnus plays queen to d4. He centralizes the queen, also nicely aligns it with the g7 pawn. Knight captures on b3, we have knight captures, rook captures, and now knight to d2, chasing away the rook, rook to b5, and knight to f1 by Magnus. And now Hans has to decide whether he wants to get the rook into the game this way. Does he want to trade queens right away? He trades queens right away, queen to b6, and queen captures on b6. We have rook captures and bishop to d4. continuing to harass the rook. And you don't want to move the rook away from the b file, as then rook to b1 could be very dangerous. So rook to b3 with tempo, and now forces Magnus's rook into passivity with rook to a1. And now Hans has to continue with something like pawn to a4. This is a very nice move. Rook to b5, for example, also can be played. King to h8. All very nice ideas. But Hans played the one move that he should not have played. He played pawn to b5, which looks great. I mean, you're going to play b4, you're going to create a pass pawn, and you're on your way to beating Magnus Carlsen in the first game of the match. But there is a problem. He missed something terrible here. Feel free to pause the video and win the game for Magnus while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, and I imagine that's 100% of you watching, congratulations on finding knight to d2. You are a master at chess. And the rook is trapped. There is no square for the rook, so only thing you can do here is give up the exchange, which is what Hans does. He plays pawn to a4, and Magnus doesn't even rush it. He just plays pawn to f3, controls the knight, prepares to bring the king into the game, and there's always time to capture the rook. We have knight to e8, and now knight captures on b3. A captures, and Magnus even plays rook to b1. It's a very odd move to play. I mean, okay, you want to win the b3 pawn, but why not play bishop to c5 first? Of course, Magnus does have a reason for this. It's not like he didn't consider bishop to c5. It's just that it's one of those positions where, you know, the move that everyone thinks of is the strongest move recommended by the engine, but you have to be extremely strong not to play it. I don't know if that makes sense. So rook to b1, rook captures on a3, and now, okay, you will win back the pawn at some point. King to f2. We have knight to c7, rook to c1, and now rook to a2, preparing bishop captures on d3 as the pawn is pinned. So king to e3, and now Hans goes knight to e8. Here, an interesting idea would be rook to c2, and then after something like rook to b1, f5. Rook captures on b3, and now look at this position. The knight is nicely guarding these two pawns. The rook excellently placed, and the bishop controlling f5, keeping the bishop on h3 out of the game. And this is extremely difficult to win, but with Hans having so little time on the clock, it's hard to come up with this stuff. Of course, Magnus would now have to move the king, put the pawns on dark square, somehow remaneuver the bishop back into the game, and he would do it eventually, but it would give maybe Hans the biggest chance to play this on. But with 2 seconds on the clock, Hans played knight to e8, and now Magnus is completely winning, and of course you guys see why. I mean, the back rank is weak. Bishop on h7 is almost a pawn here. Magnus played rook to c8, and now there is no defense here. King to f8, bishop to c5 check, and he was in this position on move 36 that Hans Niemann resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. One more move can be played, and then rook captures on e8 is checkmate. So Magnus took the lead here, and he absolutely dominated Hans in the 5+1 section. I think he won by a 5-point margin, 7.5 to 2.5, and then in the 3+1 and 1+1 they went equal. So I don't know the exact score, like maybe 4 to 4 in 3+1 section, and then maybe 5 to 5 in the 1+1 section, but Magnus completely dominated the 5+1 section, and that was enough to win the game. I think Magnus said afterwards that he was sort of nervous going into the match, but that he just wanted it to be over really quickly, but he knew after a few games in the 5+1 section that he will easily win the match. Hans, of course, said that I mean, he's very sorry about his performance. He apologized to his fans, and he said that he will do everything in his power to become the absolute best chess player in the world. So he's really trying to get there. It almost seems like he's rushing it. Like every interview he gives, he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm the next Bobby Fischer." And while he does have something, he still has to polish it properly. And now, every world champion before he became what he truly can become was, tutored by someone, like Kasparov by Botvinnik, then Magnus by Kasparov, then Magnus still hasn't tutored anyone, but now Hans is being tutored by Kramnik. Who knows how strong Hans will become, but for now, when we talk about who is the best speed chess player in the world, it's always a conversation between Alireza, Hikaru, and Magnus. Hans did get a little bit into the conversation, but not a lot. And for those of you who don't know, this is the first time since the Speed Chess Championship began that Hikaru Nakamura is not in the finals, eliminated by Alireza Firouzja. So there's a first for everything, because I think the first iteration was in 2016. It was Magnus versus Hikaru in the finals, and everyone thought it was always going to be Magnus versus Hikaru in the finals. Okay, Magnus did lose to MVL once, and Hikaru now lost to Alireza. So things are happening. Who knows who will be in the finals next year? But yeah, that's the game, or rather, those were the games. Hope you guys enjoyed it. It will be Hikaru versus Alireza today in the match for third place, and Magnus will face Alireza to see who is the best speed chess player in the world. It's gonna be very intense. It's hard to say because Alireza crushed Hikaru harder than Magnus crushed Hans. So we'll see. I mean, of course, that doesn't matter. It's still, I mean, you have to play against Magnus, and Magnus has to play against Alireza. So I don't know about you guys, but I will enjoy watching this one very much. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank GuernseyChessFestival.org.gg, Frank W.H. Schaefer, Steven Binder, Gautam Bhattacharya, and Ren Songhua for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.